Time for a break from our show to pay the bills. Check out beacons.ai/comics fund profit for all the C4 FAP links you could ever need, all in one place. You can provide feedback, listen, support, share, enjoy these. We have our Patreon there. You can buy us a beer or a coffee. You can check out our Instagrams, our Twitters, our Facebooks. Check out our YouTube page. You can email us. You can listen to our podcasts on Patreon, if you're a subscriber, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on Podbean. We have Google Podcasts on there. We have an Amazon wish list. You want to buy Kyle and I something? Fine. You can do that here. We appreciate it. We have Kyle's RPG podcast listed on there, so you can check out his Dork Day afternoon offerings. We have Cowabunga links, so you can check out the Cowabunga deep discount FOC and pre-order list. Get on that. That's RLCS, so you can check that out as well. And we want to just give you opportunities to say hi, to check out what we're doing, support us if you would like, or just listen. Check out beacons.ai/comics fund profit for all the C4 FAP links you could ever need. Thanks. Back to the show.
Aloha. This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing writer and artist Xavier Saxon. He is here to promote his Comixology Originals graphic novel, Night at the Belfry. It is now available on Comixology. Xavier, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you very much. Now, listeners, before we start the interview, I want to give a big shout out to Pamela Horvath of Superfan Promotion. Pamela, thank you very much for setting up this interview, and thank you very much for the advanced copy, sending me an advanced copy, of this incredible, amazing original graphic novel. So, Pamela, thank you very much. I'm going to ask Xavier, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you, Pamela. It's been really helpful having like a promotional team as someone who doesn't really know what they're doing. My first book, and kind of having people to help set up interviews and schedule things like this has been a huge help.
Oh, no, but yeah. So again, Pamela, thank you very much. Now, before I start jumping in to our interview, I just want to let listeners know I did get some information about Xavier from the YouTube podcast, from some of his past interviews that he's done from other podcasts or written articles, such as the YouTube podcast True North Country Comics. That was about, I would say, I think Xavier, I think that was back sometime in October. If I forgot to write down the date on that, but I know you've done one recently.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And then also too, Barbara Dillon, a fan of the show, a fan-based press. She did a written interview article with you, and that was dated back on November 1st of 2022. So listeners, if you guys get a chance, if you want more, if you want, please check out, check out those interviews that Xavier has done in the past. It's great, like I've checked out the YouTube, the True North Country Comics podcast. That's great. And also, if you get a chance, please, read Barbara's interview with Xavier. And like I said, that's great as well too. Now, Xavier, I'm going to ask, where can listeners follow you on social media?
I do have a Instagram and Twitter account.
Mm-hmm.
They are Xavier_Saxon_. I do not yet have a website, but I've purchased a domain name. So I'm going at some point I will have a website, but that will be XavierSaxon.com at some point.
Okay.
Got to actually make the website now, because I know it's a good thing to have a website like separate from social media, so you don't really have to rely on these platforms. But
yes,
got to build that.
Okay. All right. And now, Xavier, I'm just going to start with your origin story. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I live in Montreal now, but Halifax, it's an East Coast city in Canada. I don't know the population, a couple 100,000, maybe 100,000 people. So yeah, that's where I grew up.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, this is a general question. Like, do you remember what was your first comic book, Sunday comics that you read, as a kid?
Well, I definitely read a lot of like newspaper comic strips. I remember reading a lot of Garfield as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Foxtrot. I don't know if you know that. It's like a
Oh, yes.
newspaper strip by Bill Amond, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I really liked those. Read a lot of Archie too.
Ah,
And
nice.
then kind of superhero comics, got into those later after
Mm-hmm.
the superhero movies became popular.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, the first superhero comic that I bought was Captain America from 2011 by Ed Brubaker and Steve McNiven,
Mm-hmm.
which yeah, they had a signed copy at the store. So I picked that up, and I learned that Steve McNiven lived in Halifax as well. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, that was nice. Okay, I'm just now, before I get to my next question, that I just have to ask off the cuff question. So, do you remember how much that autograph copy was? I mean, for Brubaker and McNiven autograph, how much was, if you remember correct? If you
Well,
remember.
it was just McNiven's autograph, and it
Oh,
was yeah, it was just regular cover price. I remember bringing it up and asking like, is this more expensive because it's signed? And they're like, no, because Steve McNiven's from around here, so you know he just comes in and do signings sometimes, and that's how I learned that yeah, he was from around here.
holy cow! Wow, that's pretty cool. That
Yeah,
is, you know,
I guess I was partially drawn to it just because it was a signed copy, so I thought that was cool.
yeah. And then, so my next question: have you ever met Steve McNiven, whether at the
I
store?
have met Steve McNiven. He was
Oh,
the first like professional artist to review my portfolio after I think it was like the summer after I graduated high school. I went to the comic book store kind of thinking I guess I got the impression that they actually knew Steve personally,
yeah.
so I asked them if they knew him and if he would be willing to do a portfolio review for me. So he actually came to the store to review my portfolio. So it wasn't even at a convention or anything. So it's pretty incredible that he, you know,
Wow.
was willing to do this for somebody who he didn't know. And, you know, my samples weren't that great, but he gave like some really good like practical advice, more so than just, you know, keep working at it, but stuff like, you know, you're relying on the ruler too much or
Hmm. Yes.
yeah, stuff that I could actually use. So that was really helpful. And it was nice just to see a professional willing to, yeah, look at my work like that.
That is really nice of him to do that. Like you said, to literally take the time to come down to the store and just sit and talk
Yeah.
to you for a little while.
Yeah. It was after the store was closed and everything. It was pretty cool.
Oh, that's nice. That
I have
is
not met him since then, but yeah, maybe
ah,
I'll run into him somewhere.
okay. That is so nice. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna ask, do you remember the name of the comic book store that you bought your was that your regular comic book store when you were growing up?
Yeah, it was. It's Strange Adventures in
Mhm.
Halifax. It's
Yes.
still open, but it's a new location. They when I started going there, they had this old location in the basement of this building. It was like a dungeon. There was like
Yes.
these very like small windows, dim lighting. I think the door to get into the actual store was only like 5.5 feet tall. So it's very dungeon like. I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of comic book stores used to be like that, and now they have a more I don't know, I guess
Yes, yes,
friendlier storefront. But
yes.
I, you know, kind of miss that old location.
Okay. I'm
But
just
yeah, it's a
asking.
great store.
Oh, nice. I'm asking. I know you said you live in Montreal now. Do you have a current comic book store that you go to?
I don't have a reserve. I had a pull list at a comic book store called Crossover Comics
Hmm.
in Saint Henry, Montreal, which is a really good store. But I just recently moved a bit further away, so I've yet to set up another one. But
Oh.
my new local store is Millennium Comics,
Hmm.
which I think Wes Craig, who did Deadly Class, also goes there. So that's
Oh,
cool. I've only been there a couple times, but it's a really nice store as well.
oh, that's pretty cool. All right. So I'm going to continue on. So, you know, you know, you know, I'm going to ask, like, how did your journey started working in comics? How did that start? Because I know, like you already mentioned about, you already showed after high school, you showed your portfolio to Steve McNiven. I'm just asked, did you continue on with, any other classes or anything? Or
Yeah. So I that when I showed Steve my portfolio, I was attending the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design in Halifax. So I think I was just taking part-time
Mhm.
classes there.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing a degree for some reason. I don't know. I was kind of not against getting a degree, but just thought, it's a lot of money, and I don't know if all those classes will be helpful. So I'll just register for the classes that I specifically think will help me become a
Yes.
comic book artist.
Yeah.
So I was doing painting and drawing classes. Um, and then I attended NASCAD for a year in Halifax. And then I moved to Montreal and started going to Concordia University part-time, where I took more painting and drawing classes. And they actually had a graphic novel writing course that I took too. So yeah, so that was
Mhm.
pretty helpful as well. And then after that, I guess I figured I got enough from university and just started working, part-time in a few at a few different places, and just drawing comics on the side, and
Mhm.
like trying to make my own comics. I guess I got the impression that I probably wasn't going to become a professional artist just by doing sample pages.
Mhm.
Seems like a lot of the times that's not really how it's done these days, like going to conventions and showing samples. It's more like you should just make something yourself.
Mhm.
So I was really trying to do that. And so I was working on this comic book. It was a funny animal comic. Like it was like a murder mystery funny animal comic.
Uh-huh.
And I just took a picture of one of the pages from that comic, and I tweeted it at Jeff Lemire, asking him,
Mhm.
because I was going to be in I think Toronto the next month for Fan Expo or something.
Uh-huh.
So I sent him a picture of one of my pages, and I was like, "Hey, would you want to review my portfolio, or would you be willing to review my portfolio when I'm in Toronto?" And he
Yeah.
actually sent me a message back and said, that my page looked cool and that he'd be willing to have a look at my stuff. And that turned into him kind of really like vouching for my work to other to
Yes.
publishers and things like that. So he was the one who put me in connection with Comixology. So when I eventually, came up with a different pitch for this current book, Night of the
Y-
Belfry,
Yes.
I sent it over to Comixology, and yeah, that's how I got in touch with them.
Oh, that is so cool. Okay. And that's a perfect segue to go into Night at the Belfry. Now, for listeners, for the listeners, let me ask, what is the story about?
So Night of the Belfry is about James Ransom, who's this 70-something-year-old retiree and former amateur boxer.
Mm-hmm.
And after a series of incidents, he kind of comes to realize that he's not as strong or as he once was. He doesn't have as much autonomy and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
He's living with his daughter, who he feels is a bit overbearing,
Mm-hmm.
and he decides to hatch this scheme to organize this series of kind of illegal underground boxing matches that
Yes.
take place
Mm-hmm.
in the bell tower of the church across the street from his apartment,
Mm-hmm.
with the idea that one of these fights will eventually
Mm-hmm.
lead to his death, that whoever wins this fight will kill him. And that's sort of his way of wanting to go out on his own terms
Mm-hmm.
and take control of his life again.
Yes. Yes. And again, that's a perfect segue to go into what inspired you to write about, because Night at the Belfry, we talked before we started recording. I mean, there's some heavy subject matters in this story. I mean, like, what inspired you to touch upon these heavy subjects about loss, about, like, as you said, Jim, he's in his 70s. He's like, his health is declining. He lost his independence. Um, and also too, there's a little bit of for him, there's a little bit of regret too as well, because as you mentioned, he was like an amateur boxer, and there's a little bit of regret. And I don't want to give too much of the story away, but there's a little bit there's some regrets in there in his life.
Yeah, I don't know that it was really a plan to start writing about these kind of dark things, because I started basically making the book
Yes. Mm-hmm.
while I was drawing it while writing it at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. So I wasn't really sure where the story was going. I just had the character, and I thought, okay, I'll put the character in this scene, and
Yes.
that's kind of just where the book naturally led. But Yeah, I was a bit nervous about writing about kind of the really dark stuff because you want to handle that stuff pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
It can be easy to
Mm-hmm.
do it wrong or
Yes.
make it offensive in some way. So I try to be really careful about a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't say I know for sure what exactly inspired it. I mentioned like in the back matter of the book, um, talking about Hunter S. Thompson, the
Yes.
writer,
Yes.
who yeah committed suicide after essentially just being tired of being old. And I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was kind of I don't know, scary and interesting too. And I wanted to explore that feeling, I guess, in a book.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that is something you got to be careful with, I guess, when you're writing something like that.
Yes. And the thing is too is that because because I know because and for some listeners who don't know who Hunter S. Thomas is, and please feel free to correct me, Xavier, at any point, that Hunter S. Thomas, is that famous writer, one of his books that he wrote, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, that became a movie, I want to say back in the mid 2000s, I can't remember. But I remember getting some information on Wikipedia, is that when he was growing older, he would frequently mutter to people that this kid is getting old because because I know he was going through some health issues and so forth like that. So yeah,
Yeah,
um,
I guess that's definitely where some of James came from. It was just someone who really did not want to be old, who would rather die than be
yes,
old and kind
hmm
of lose that autonomy.
hmm
So yeah, I actually haven't read any of Hunter S. Thompson's stuff, but I learned about that part of him and you know that that definitely I guess led me to write about some of this stuff.
and then and Xavier, I'm going to add this on. I know it's not in the questions I sent, but I just want to point out too that like you handled the subject matter very well of how Jim wanted to go on his own terms. And the thing is, I also want to point out that it's very good because how you dealt with that is it's really good because also too he hooks back up with one of his old trainers, Maurice,
Hmm.
who trained him, God, like he said back, Jim said back in the 80s, and you know he has Maurice help set up these illegal fights. But also too, I think what was very good too is that you also had Maurice as kind of that voice of reasoning, going, "Hey, I'm not a therapist. Maybe you should go get help
Yeah,
or something." But that's good that you kind of handled it, very well because again, part of it, Maurice seems a little. He's got a little bit of a seedy background. I don't want to give the story away, but yet at the same time, again, he goes, yeah, maybe, Jim, what you're doing, uh, try to get some help. Go talk to somebody else. Let's not do this.
yeah. He is saying that but he is also going along with his plan. So there's a bit of selfishness there, but it
Yes,
also I like having him in the story. It kind of gives an example of someone who is in a similar position to Jim, like is even older than Jim,
that's
but is
right.
a lot happier with their situation, who's a
Yes.
lot better adjusted and kind of accepting of old age.
hmm
And I thought having, those two personalities would be pretty interesting.
That's right. You're right. That's right. That's nice because that's right because Maurice still has his boxing gym. He still has his gym. He still runs it. That's
Yeah,
right.
and he's kind of accepted, this more background
Mm.
managerial role,
Yes,
and he's not fighting old age in the same way that Jim is.
that's right. That's a very good point because I kept wondering why Maurice and Jim in their scenes they always they weren't they were like that perfect buddy couple, that they always balance each
Yeah,
other out. And because when I was reading it, I couldn't figure out what because he had a very good chemistry, and I couldn't figure out what it was until thank you very much for pointing that out. Yeah. All right.
yeah, I like writing them two together. It's kind of one of the few times where you see James happy in the books is when he's hanging out with Maurice, having a good time and training.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Um, let's see. I'm gonna ask um yeah, how did you come up with the title? Because I'm just gonna say, please don't, and like this is kind of off the cuff comment, but Night at the Belfry sounds more like it it it, it it, 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 because when I think of Night at the Belfry, I keep thinking it's either going to be some type of 1930s comedy or some type of a 1930s horror movie. But yeah. So I'm gonna ask for you, where did you come up with this title?
The title was pretty early, and it didn't change. It was just, I don't know. I guess I like the simplicity of it, but to me, it also sounded like kind of one of those old boxing promo posters that you would
Uh-huh.
see, advertising a boxing match, and it would be like Night at the Belfry. Go see these two fighters,
Oh,
duke
nice.
it out. But yeah, I did realize, maybe it sounds more like a comedy special or something like that. But I think it works as both.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay. Now, um, you mentioned in the back matter, and I love the back matter that you have, is that, you know, um, the early drawings of Jim, um, the pictures of the church, because if I remember correctly, I think you live close to the church that you use in the book, you know, and I know you mentioned other stuff. Now, in the back matter, you mentioned that you don't have much interest in boxing. Now, I'm just going to ask, may I ask, why did you use boxing as like a major part of the story?
And I can't really remember how I came up with that exactly. Because
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not a big boxing fan. I don't know a lot about boxing,
Mhm.
but I guess it kind of worked as a good visual metaphor. You can see exactly how you can show this image of him in his youth as this strong,
Yes.
powerful boxer and where he is now.
Yes.
And in a relatively short story, it's just a good way to visually indicate where he's come. Like he's a lot smaller now, and he
Mhm.
feels smaller in a lot of different ways.
Mhm.
And having him get back into boxing with in his current situation, it's he's just putting himself back in I guess situations that he would have been when he was younger, but in his with his current uh body and mind. And
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, I think it's a good it has a good, like I said, visual metaphor of just showing his decline, or what
Yeah.
he sees as his decline.
Mhm.
He puts so much value in being physically strong, or and that's kind of an unhealthy thing to put too much power in,
Mhm.
because
Yes.
you're
Yes.
not going to always have the same physical strength as you do in your youth. But
Yes.
he kind
Mhm.
of put his entire he built his whole personality around it.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
when it inevitably went away, it kind of, you know, it's
Yeah.
like his world just collapsed.
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. Um, I'm going to no now again, I'm not going to spoil because just listening you talk about this, and again, no spoilers. So listeners, I encourage you to check this this Comixology original. Um, because throughout the story there is little um because now I get it, because there's some scenes where it's like, now I know why, and we'll talk after the recording. Now I know why there's some scenes are in the book, and it makes sense. It does. I'm not, like I said, we'll get to it in a bit. Yeah, we'll get to it afterwards. And it's really nice. It's a nice. It's a um. Xavier, I just talking to you. It's nice to see the contrast of, again, of what Jim represents. He's having a hard time accepting where he is in his life at this point, whereas Maurice, who's a little bit older in him, has accepted where he is in his life. And then also too, how Jim, is looking back at his quote unquote his glory days as an amateur boxer, you know um you know um and then, throughout the story, there's little subtle hints of is that there's a nice contrast in there as well. And like I said, we'll talk after more of the recording, but I want the readers to when they read it to see it. So yeah, it's great. Now I'm gonna, I've already mentioned about, in the back matter that you live, that you now correct me if I'm, you still live near a church, or the church you're still, the church is in your area,
Basically, yeah, like the whole setting of the book is where I lived. Like his
Okay.
apartment was my apartment that I lived in.
Mhm.
Like the interiors and the exteriors. I guess I'm not very creative when it comes to settings, so I just literally drew my apartment, my street, the church
Mhm.
across the street from me. And yeah, I think that did help make the world feel kind of tangible and real because I'm just drawing what's really there.
Mhm.
But yeah, in the back of the book, you can see I put some photographs of the real locations,
Mhm.
and I had to change things a bit. The church is a bit simplified because it's a
Yeah.
very elaborate design in real
Yeah.
life, the church, and I have to draw it a lot. So I'm like, okay, well, these pillars with all these intricate designs on them, I'll just make them regular pillars.
Yeah. That's fine. Um, because and because again, visually, I love, the visually, it's the, because I think because I read it, the advanced copy on my computer, and I think one page it just shows the church as it's very magnificently drawn. It really is.
Yeah, I like drawing the church from those, the full shots of it where you get to see the whole building. There's a couple
Yes,
times in the book where I get to do that at different scales. I
yes,
think the last page is like a big picture, you get to see it.
yes. And
But
then
those were definitely challenging.
now I'm gonna ask what is the importance of the belfry to Jim? What is, because I take it that where Jim was living, the church was right across, it was near where he lives. Or correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't really make it clear how long he's been living in that specific apartment,
Yeah.
but he mentions that, when he was working as a postman, he used to walk right by this church every single day or every
Yes.
week.
Yes.
And it's again just this kind of monolith from his youth that's stayed the same structurally.
Mhm.
It's this towering thing. And when he used to walk by it, I guess it used to represent something hopeful for him.
Mhm.
But now he's older and he's shrunken down, and
Mhm.
this church is still the same. It's
Mhm.
this massive thing. And I
Mhm.
guess to him, when he sees that, he just thinks of missed opportunities and things that he didn't do. And his idea of having the boxing matches in this church belfry is like he wants to conquer it. He wants to live up to all those
Nice.
things
Mhm.
that he all
Mhm.
these aspirations from his youth.
Mhm. That is nice. And I have to comment, you know, and correct me, I know there's one nice um panel, um, of Jim basically first fight in the belfry. It's one of those shots from above looking down where you see Jim is like in quote unquote one corner, and his opponent Phil that they found is in another corner, and
Mhm.
Maurice is it just captures those nice TV shots of looking down into the literally in the boxing ring. It's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I was Allison who did the who edited the book. She really pushed me to change the camera angles a lot
Mhm.
for the
Yes.
panels because there were a couple scenes of talking heads or just two characters talking
Hmm.
where in the original draft it was just all from one angle, you know,
Hmm.
their faces one by one,
Hmm.
or maybe a wide shot of both of them. And she really pushed me to kind of move the camera around and be more dynamic in these scenes, even when
Hmm.
not much is happening. So
Yes.
if it's a scene of just two of them standing opposite corners, they're not even doing anything yet, but you want to try to show it in an interesting way.
Yes. I have to say, but that boxing scene
Yeah,
image of them looking, it captured the spirit of like this is a
yeah, you
boxing
can
match.
see how it kind of looks like a boxing ring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's really, it's great. It's very
I guess
beautiful.
that's where the idea of the church bell tower came from too. It's
Hmm.
just seeing it in real life and thinking, oh, that kind of looks like it could be a boxing ring.
Hmm.
You know, it's got the waist high railings and
Yes,
everything.
that's right. Yeah. All right. So, now correct me if I'm wrong. I now this is your debut in comics. Is that correct?
Hmm. Yeah.
Now, how did you feel when you first saw your name after it was like digitally published or digitally on Comixology? How did you feel?
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, probably the coolest thing was seeing the design for the cover come in because I did the cover drawing myself,
Yes.
and then we sent off the drawing to, have a logo put on there and kind of put the Comixology logo, have the cover design by Cindy Long, who did
Mhm.
the cover design, and having that come back and seeing my name and the logo for the first time. I think I sat like looking at it for like an hour because at first I was like, well, I don't know, maybe I want to change this about the logo, but I just sat looking at it and being like, I like it. This is good.
Mhm.
I don't want to change anything about it.
Mhm.
So that was
And
a
I
cool
have
moment.
and I have to say it's a very nice cover because it captures to me it captures everything um of who Jim is. It's really nice. It really is, you know.
Yeah, again, in the back of the book, you can see all the different cover sketches that I did,
Yes. Hmm.
the preliminary ones. And I have a few where he's kind of looking a little more epic, like
Hmm.
really ready to fight. But I thought I don't know that having that on the cover wouldn't necessarily show who the character is, or I guess his struggle. So I
Yes.
wanted to have him just looking really exhausted,
Yes.
in his boxing, his boxing gloves and shorts and everything
Yes.
in this Belfry, but just looking completely wiped out. I thought that was
Yes.
interesting to have on the cover.
No, and it's great. It's perfect. Um, let's see. You already mentioned Cindy Leong and no, okay. So Cindy Leong was the she designed the cover, is that correct? Or helped you design it?
Yeah, she designed the logo
Mhm.
for the book and also the inside cover pages.
Okay.
So like you open the book and the back matter too. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So she did all of that.
Mhm.
And I was really happy with that, how that came out. I like how it's all blue. I have a blue book.
Yes, and also too, you've already mentioned Allison O'Toole as your editor. I'm just going to ask, you want to add anything more to Allison? You want to, any extra shout outs to her or anything? Or
I mean, yeah, she was a huge help. I hope I get to keep working with her in the future.
Mhm,
Like having the book is definitely a lot better for having her on there.
mhm. And then, um, Xavier, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this was that now, and I'm sure you met, and I know you mentioned it throughout the interview, is that, well, like, as I mentioned, that you're the writer, you're the artist. You also did the colors too as well, is that correct? And the inking as well.
Yeah, I did yeah, the colors and the inking as well. That was mostly just so I could because if you kind of give these jobs to other people, you have to
Mhm.
pay them for it.
Oh
So
yeah,
this
no,
way
yeah.
I got to keep more of the advanced money. So that was a but I didn't take into account how long it would take. So I might have
Mhm.
actually saved money if I got, colorists and
Yeah.
inkers to actually do this who do it all the time rather
Mhm.
than me struggling through it in
Mhm.
Photoshop. I might have actually saved money and time, but it was an experience. I'm glad I got to do all of that because, you should try doing all that stuff if you're a comic creator, just to have a better understanding of what all the different jobs are.
That's true, yes. And I have to
Yeah.
say, I love the colors in this story. It's I'm not an artist, I'm not a colorist, but it's just very nice to look at. It really, it really is. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, but like I said, I love the colors in this. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I think Allison mentioned that she like the colors were originally what drew her to the project, which is interesting because I did them in a very like methodic sort of way. Like it was like I did them the same for every page basically.
Oh,
Like a
okay.
lot of colors, like to change things up with the palettes and stuff, but I just did everything in local color. So just
Hmm.
the color that the object actually is, and then I threw on some sort of like overlay
Hmm.
to change the mood of the scene. So I
Yes.
was basically doing it in the way to save as much time and work as possible. But yeah, I got a couple of people say they like the colors, which is nice.
Yes. And then before I start asking, a few more questions, the other thing I wanted to mention was one of the other things I loved about your books, not only the how well you handled the heavy subject matter, um the I think Jim and I think his daughter Emily is his
Hmm.
daughter, their
Yep.
apartment felt lived in. It just to me it just felt lived in. When Jim is walking in his neighborhood, it just felt really lived in. It's really nice, and literally took the and again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I love, the last few pages where I think it started to snow, and it just felt, um yeah, like I said, it just felt the art is really nice. It's, that this is a lived in world. It's really like I could relate to it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, that having real, streets and buildings and my actual apartment to work off was
Mhm.
definitely helpful for that. If it was more realistic, I probably would have put more like dead leaves and
Mhm.
garbage and snow on the ground for January, which is when the book takes place. I think there maybe should have been a little more snow. I don't think he could have been walking around in a sweater
Yeah.
in Montreal in like -40. But yeah, maybe I could have added a little more dirt and grime. But
So,
definitely having the real location was helpful. And yeah, the
mhm.
inside of their apartment, I mean, it was all my stuff.
Mhm.
It's like my couch, my like you see they have their TV propped on like a bin, like not even a TV stand, because that's
Yeah.
what I had.
Well, but that's but I have to say it's nice that it's it but the thing, like I said, it worked. Like you said, like you said, this is pictures of my apartment, this is what it looked like. But it worked because it felt, like I said, it felt grounded. It really did, you know. So yeah, like I said, it's very good. It's a great story.
Thank you.
I'm
I'm glad it feels grounded. Yeah.
I'm going to ask, and if you don't know, that's fine. But do you know when this might be coming out, like in printed trade?
I don't know exactly. I asked, the people at Comixology kind of when around I could expect it, and it looks
Yeah.
like it's still going to be a while, so probably
Okay.
not for at least another year. And then maybe after that we'll see it in print, hopefully.
Yeah. No.
And you know,
Okay.
yeah, but not 2023, I don't think.
Okay. All right. And I'm just going to remind listeners again, it's available on Comixology right now. Um, and I think, and I have always said this, one of the things I love about digital comics right now is that literally you can get it anywhere in the world as long as you have internet access. That's I think one of the amazing things right now. If
Yeah, I read a lot of digital comics, definitely.
yeah.
It's nice to just save space too.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Now I know listeners have heard in previous interviews, but in this is only an audio, but as Xavier can see, I have boxes of comics I still have to read. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple long boxes.
Um, okay. I'm gonna slowly start wrapping things up, Xavier. Are there any characters you would like to write for? Anything from Marvel, Image, you know.
Um, I don't really know. I'm not sure I'm equipped to write like superheroes. I like superhero comics, but
Mhm.
I don't necessarily know a lot about their various histories and things. That would be
Mhm.
very daunting to kind of jump into that.
Mhm.
But I'd probably draw a couple of them. If somebody wanted to write the story and I could draw some of them, I would do it. Always been a big fan of Daredevil. I like
Ah,
Daredevil, or maybe just some like really obscure character that nobody cares about. So if I mess it up, it's okay.
But no, but actually, don't Xavier, don't take this the wrong way, and this is a little bit off the cuff. I'm saying is that even if it's an obscure character, what's kind of cool is that um you you can have your own little freedom of doing what you want, and if it catches on, it catches on big.
Yeah, it seems like those obscure characters sometimes get the best, get the best runs because there's not as much. I guess a character like Spider-Man or something, they can be maybe a little afraid to do something totally different with it
Yes.
because it has such a huge fan base. But with a character that isn't as popular, like I'm thinking of like Animal Man from
Yeah.
Grant Morrison,
Yes.
they can just do something completely different and weird with it.
Oh yes, yeah. All right. Is there a certain genre, that you would like to work in? A certain comic genre that you want to work in sometime in the future?
I'd like to, yeah, I'd like to try any genre. I'm a big fantasy fan, so I'd like to do something fantasy, sword and sorcery,
Oh,
and then yeah, that's probably what I'd like to do the most.
that's pretty cool. Okay. I'm slowly wrapping things up. I know creators can't talk about future projects, but I'm going to ask, will we see more of your work in the future?
I hope so. Yes. I mean, even if I can't get it published through a known publisher, I would want to put something out, even if it's just for free online. I don't like the idea of going too long without putting out something else. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, should be seeing more of me at some point.
All right, that's nice. All right. Now, you know, what was the most fun or exciting thing that you love working on, on Night at the Belfry?
Probably the most exciting part is the beginning, where you're really passionate about the idea and
Mhm.
you're just spitting out all these, yeah, all these ideas you have for the story, and really kind of working out and fine tuning the the actual beats of the story and taking it from this really messy concept and just refining it into something that really works.
Mhm.
And then after that, it's just a lot of work. At that point you just have to stick with it and do the work. It's not necessarily going to be as exciting after that,
Mhm.
but it can still be a lot of fun. Like I like inking a lot because
Mhm.
you really get to see the page come together.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
So maybe that's my favorite drawing part is
Mhm.
inking.
All right. Have you and your family been to Hawaii?
I have not personally been to Hawaii. My dad lived in Hawaii for a little bit, I want to say, in this would have been a couple decades ago. I don't have a lot of information on this. I wish I knew more, but he lived or stayed in Hawaii for some time in maybe the 80s or early 90s. So
Wow. Mhm.
that's all I know. But
Okay.
he loves Hawaii. So I think he wants to go back at some point.
All right. Final question. Any closing words to our listeners?
Um, thank you for listening to the end of this podcast. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. Now, Xavier, I want to wish you all the success with Night at the Belfry. Mahalo. Thank you in Hawaiian. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview you. I also want to thank Pamela of Superfan Promotions for help setting up this interview. Again, Pamela, thank you very much. Now, if you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader, please check out Xavier's original graphic novel, Night at the Belfry. It is now available on Comixology. You know, it's a great story. It really is. It's a great slice of life story that deals with heavy themes, you know, and and as you've heard, throughout the interview, to me, it's drawn beautifully. It is, especially the church. It's like I say, it's very magnificently drawn. I want to thank Drew, the host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Aloha.
As you know, our LCS is Cowabunga Comics, Lake Country, Wisconsin's best pop culture destination for new comics, back issues, gaming, retro video games, vinyl, and figures. Give them a call, 262-569-9999. Check them out online at cowabungacomics.com or follow them on Twitter at Incredicow. They are our LCS, and we utilize their deep discount mail order service to bring Oconomowoc, Wisconsin closer to us. They'll take care of you. Tell them Drew and Kyle sent you. Say hi to Eric and James from us. If you need an LCS, you can't go wrong with Cowabunga Comics.